I still remember the moment. I stepped through the cold iron gates of Eastern State Penitentiary in Pennsylvania. The air felt heavier than normal, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Opened in 1829, this prison was once considered a revolutionary idea, a place where silence was meant to reform the soul. But silence, when forced, has a strange way of turning into something darker. The long stone corridors stretched endlessly, lined with solitary confinement cells where prisoners spent days, months, even years alone with their thoughts. No voices, no human touch. Only the echo of their own minds. As I walked deeper inside, my footsteps bounced off the walls, and for a brief second, it felt like someone was walking just behind me. When I turned, there was no one there. Visitors often talk about whispers floating through the cell blocks, soft voices speaking words that cannot be understood. Standing in one of the empty cells, I heard what sounded like faint crying, as if the pain of the past had never truly left. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my eyes, slipping away whenever I tried to focus on them. It was as though the prison refused to reveal its secrets all at once. Eastern State Penitentiary doesn't just tell a story of punishment, it tells a story of isolation, suffering, and broken minds. Even today, long after the prisoners are gone, the building feels awake, watching, remembering. Many believe the spirits of former inmates are still trapped inside these walls, replaying their endless nights of loneliness. That is why this prison is known across the world as one of the most haunted places ever built. Eastern State Penitentiary opened its massive doors in the year 1829 in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at a time when the world was still struggling to understand crime, punishment, and human reform. America was young, its laws were evolving, and society believed that crime could be erased not through violence, but through isolation and deep personal reflection. The prison was built with a bold and frightening philosophy. If a man was left alone long enough, surrounded by silence and darkness, he would confront his sins and emerge reformed. This idea was inspired by religious beliefs, especially the concept of penitence, which is why the place was named a penitentiary. When it first opened, Eastern State was unlike any prison the world had ever seen. Its design shocked visitors and officials alike. Thick stone walls towered high, giving the impression of a medieval fortress rather than a correctional facility. From above, the prison was shaped like a wheel, with cell blocks spreading out from a central hub, allowing guards to observe multiple corridors at once. This design later inspired prisons across the globe, from Europe to South America, making Eastern State a model for modern incarceration. The opening of the prison was considered a moment of pride for Pennsylvania. Politicians, architects, and reformers praised it as a humane alternative to brutal punishments such as public executions and physical torture. Inside each cell, prisoners were given a bed, a Bible, a small exercise yard, and just enough light from a single window to remind them of the outside world. But what seemed progressive on paper slowly revealed a darker reality in practice. In 1829, the first inmates were brought into Eastern State Penitentiary under strict rules. They were hooded so they could not see or communicate with others. Their names were stripped away, replaced by numbers. Silence was absolute. Even guards wore felt, covered shoes to prevent the sound of footsteps. The prison was not meant to echo with noise. It was meant to echo with thoughts. The architects and founders believed that silence would guide prisoners toward moral rebirth, but instead, it often guided them toward madness. As the years passed after its opening, reports began to surface about prisoners suffering severe mental breakdowns. Men screamed into the stone walls, talked to shadows, and lost their grip on reality. Yet despite these warnings, Eastern State continued to operate under its original vision, convinced that the suffering was necessary for reform. Famous writers like Charles Dickens later visited the prison and were deeply disturbed by what they saw, describing the experience as cruel and haunting. The year 1829 did not just mark the opening of a prison. It marked the beginning of an experiment on the human mind. Every brick laid into Eastern State Penitentiary carried the weight of ambition, faith, and ignorance. The prison stood as a symbol of hope for reformers and as a nightmare for those locked inside. From the moment it opened, it began collecting stories of isolation, despair, and silence so deep that many believe it still lingers in the walls today. Eastern State Penitentiary became famous, and later infamous, for its strict system of solitary confinement, a method that defined the daily lives of every prisoner held within its stone walls. This system was not a side feature of the prison, it was its entire foundation. The belief behind it was simple yet terrifying. Total isolation would force prisoners to reflect on their crimes, repent for their sins, and emerge as morally transformed individuals. In reality, this experiment in silence pushed many inmates beyond the limits of the human mind. From the moment a prisoner entered Eastern State, isolation began. Inmates were placed in individual cells, designed to cut them off completely from the outside world. Each cell was constructed with thick stone walls, a heavy wooden door, and a small opening known as the Eye of God, a circular skylight in the ceiling that allowed a narrow beam of light to fall into the cell. This was the prisoner's only connection to the sky, symbolizing that only God could see and judge them. Human contact was intentionally erased. Prisoners were forbidden from speaking to one another at any time. Even when they were allowed outside, into their private exercise yards, the walls were high enough to prevent them from seeing or hearing other inmates. Guards communicated with prisoners as little as possible, delivering food silently and enforcing rules with cold precision. Inmates wore hoods when moved through corridors, so they could not recognize faces or learn the layout of the prison. Their world was reduced to a few square feet of stone, iron, and silence. The effects of this isolation were devastating. Without voices, faces, or human warmth, prisoners began to lose their sense of identity. Days blended into nights, and time became meaningless. Many inmates developed severe anxiety, depression, and hallucinations. Some believed they heard whispers calling their names, while others claimed shadows moved along the walls of their cells. The mind, deprived of stimulation, created its own horrors. What was meant to heal the soul slowly fractured it. Historical records describe prisoners rocking back and forth for hours, staring into nothingness, or speaking to imaginary companions. Some scratched messages into the stone walls, desperate to leave proof that they had existed. Others wept uncontrollably or screamed into the silence, only to hear their own voices echo back at them. Medical professionals of the time began to notice that solitary confinement did not reform behavior, it destroyed mental stability. Despite growing criticism, The prison administration defended the system, insisting that suffering was part of moral correction. They believed that silence allowed prisoners to hear their conscience more clearly. However, many inmates emerged from Eastern State worse than when they entered, emotionally broken and mentally unstable. The damage inflicted by years of isolation often followed them long after their release. Eastern State Penitentiary's solitary confinement system eventually became a warning rather than a model. What began as an idealistic vision of reform turned into a dark chapter in penal history. The silence imposed within those cells was not peaceful. It was suffocating. Many believe that the emotional torment endured there left a permanent imprint on the prison, one that visitors still sense today in the form of whispers, shadows, and an overwhelming feeling of unrest. Visitors to Eastern State Penitentiary often arrive expecting history, architecture, and old prison cells. But many leave shaken by experiences they cannot logically explain. Over the years, countless reports have described ghostly whispers, shadow figures, and unexplained crying sounds echoing through the abandoned cell blocks. These accounts come not only from paranormal investigators, but also from tourists, historians, security staff, and employees who never believed in ghosts until they encountered something inside the prison. One of the most commonly reported experiences is hearing whispers in areas where no one else is present. Visitors describe faint voices murmuring close to their ears, sometimes calling names, sometimes speaking words that cannot be clearly understood. These whispers often occur in cell block 12, which is widely believed to be one of the most active areas of the prison. People say the voices seem to come from inside the walls, as if the stone itself is speaking. When they stop to listen more closely, the whispers either fade away or suddenly stop, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Shadow figures are another frequent phenomenon. Many visitors report seeing dark, human-shaped forms moving quickly across cell doorways or standing at the end of long corridors. These shadows are often seen in peripheral vision and vanish the moment someone turns to face them directly. Some describe the figures as tall and thin, while others say they appear hunched, as if still trapped in the posture of prisoners who once lived there. What makes these sightings more disturbing is that they are often seen in areas lit by modern lighting, where natural shadows should not behave in such a way. Crying and sobbing sounds are also commonly reported, especially during quieter hours or guided night tours. Visitors have described hearing deep, emotional weeping that seems to come from empty cells. The cries are often described as full of pain and despair, echoing the emotional suffering that once filled the prison. Some people have followed the sound, only to find themselves standing alone in a locked cell block with no possible source. Others say the crying suddenly turns into silence the moment they acknowledge it. Former staff members and night guards have shared particularly disturbing accounts. Some have reported hearing footsteps behind them while patrolling empty corridors, only to turn around and find no one there. Others have spoken about doors slamming shut on their own or feeling sudden drops in temperature in specific areas of the prison. Several guards have refused to work alone after dark, claiming the atmosphere becomes oppressive, as if unseen eyes are watching from within the cells. Paranormal investigators who have studied Eastern State Penitentiary suggest that the intense emotional suffering experienced by inmates may have left a kind of residual energy behind. Years of isolation, despair, guilt, and mental breakdowns created an environment saturated with trauma. According to this belief, the whispers, shadows, and cries are not active spirits trying to communicate, but emotional imprints replaying moments of extreme pain, like echoes trapped in time. What makes these reports especially unsettling is their consistency. People who have never spoken to each other often describe nearly identical experiences in the same locations. Skeptics who enter the prison with a rational mindset sometimes leave questioning their beliefs after witnessing something they cannot explain. Whether one believes these experiences are paranormal or psychological, there is no denying that Eastern State Penitentiary has an atmosphere unlike any other place. The prison does not feel empty. It feels occupied, as if the voices of the past never truly learned how to leave. Even in daylight, Eastern State Penitentiary carries an atmosphere that feels heavy, unsettling, and deeply uncomfortable, as if the building itself remembers everything that happened within its walls. Long before anyone hears whispers or sees shadows, many visitors report feeling an overwhelming sense of unease the moment they step inside. The temperature often feels colder than outside, not just physically but emotionally, creating a chilling contrast between the bright world beyond the gates and the darkness contained within. The prison's architecture plays a powerful role in shaping this feeling. Thick stone walls rise on all sides, blocking out sound and light, making the space feel closed and suffocating. The corridors stretch endlessly, narrow and dim, forcing visitors to walk slowly, almost carefully, as though the building demands respect or silence. Every footstep echoes loudly, then disappears, leaving behind a sense of isolation similar to what prisoners once endured. The emptiness feels unnatural, as if the silence is not peaceful but watchful. Many people describe feeling sudden waves of sadness or anxiety without any clear reason. Some experience pressure in their chest, dizziness, or the sensation of being watched, even when they are alone. These feelings often intensify in areas once used for solitary confinement, where inmates spent years cut off from all human contact. Standing inside these cells, visitors often say it becomes difficult to breathe normally, as if the walls are closing in or absorbing their energy. Some leave these spaces quickly, overwhelmed by emotions they cannot explain. Former employees and tour guides have also spoken openly about the prison's disturbing atmosphere. Several guides admit that they avoid certain areas when they are alone, especially cell blocks known for violent histories or mental breakdowns. Even those who work there daily say the feeling never completely fades. They describe moments when the air feels thick and still, when sound seems to vanish, and when the building feels alive, alert, and aware of their presence. Psychologists and historians suggest that this unsettling atmosphere may be linked to the prison's past. For more than a century, Eastern State Penitentiary was filled with human suffering, guilt, isolation, and despair. Thousands of men experienced mental collapse within these walls, leaving behind emotional trauma that some believe has permanently stained the environment. Whether one believes in paranormal explanations or psychological responses, the emotional weight of that history is undeniable. Visitors often say the prison feels different from other historic sites. While many old buildings feel abandoned or quiet, Eastern State feels tense and restless. The silence is not empty, it feels loaded with memories. People find themselves lowering their voices instinctively, even when there is no reason to be quiet. Some report feeling relief the moment they exit the prison, as if a burden has been lifted from their minds and bodies. The unsettling atmosphere of Eastern State Penitentiary does not rely on ghost sightings or strange sounds. It exists constantly, woven into the stone, the shadows, and the silence. It is a feeling that presses down on visitors, reminding them that this was not just a building, but a place where countless lives were broken, forgotten, and left to fade behind locked doors. Eastern State Penitentiary is widely considered one of the most haunted prisons in the world, not because of a single legend or isolated incident, but because of the sheer volume of disturbing experiences reported over decades. Its reputation did not come from movies or modern ghost stories alone. It grew slowly through countless personal accounts, historical records, and the prison's deeply disturbing past. Among paranormal researchers, historians, and horror enthusiasts, Eastern State is often mentioned in the same breath as the most infamous haunted locations on Earth. What sets Eastern State apart from other abandoned prisons is the intensity and consistency of the reports. Many haunted places are known for one specific ghost or a single tragic event, but Eastern State is associated with ongoing, widespread paranormal activity across multiple cell blocks. Visitors report experiences in different areas that align closely with the prison's history of isolation, mental breakdowns, and emotional suffering. This consistency has made it a focal point for paranormal investigations and documentaries around the world. The prison has been featured in numerous television shows, books, and research projects focused on the paranormal. Investigators using audio recording devices claim to capture unexplained voices, breathing sounds, and distant cries when no one else is present. Thermal cameras have reportedly detected sudden cold spots and unexplained temperature drops in certain cells, even when surrounding areas remain stable. These findings have fueled the belief that Eastern State is not just abandoned, but active with unseen forces. Another reason it is considered among the most haunted prisons is the emotional nature of the reported phenomena. Unlike playful or neutral ghost stories, experiences at Eastern State are often described as deeply disturbing and sorrowful. People rarely report friendly apparitions or harmless encounters. Instead, they describe overwhelming fear, sadness, and emotional heaviness, as if the spirits or energies present are trapped in states of suffering. This aligns closely with the prison's history, where inmates endured years of isolation that drove many into madness. The reputation of Eastern State has also been strengthened by accounts from skeptics who never expected to experience anything unusual. Many visitors enter the prison purely for historical interest and leave shaken after hearing voices, seeing shadows, or feeling sudden panic. Some have reported intense headaches or emotional distress that disappears shortly after leaving the property. These reactions are often cited as evidence that the prison's haunting is not based on imagination alone, but on something deeply embedded in the location. Culturally, Eastern State Penitentiary has become a symbol of haunted incarceration. While many prisons around the world have dark histories, few are as strongly associated with paranormal activity. Its massive stone structure, decaying cell blocks, and oppressive silence create the perfect environment for fear, But its reputation goes beyond atmosphere. It is the stories, thousands of them, that elevate Eastern State to legendary status. Paranormal researchers often describe the prison as a place where trauma never dissipated. The belief is that extreme emotional pain can leave behind residual energy, creating repeated echoes of past suffering. Whether interpreted as ghosts, psychological responses, or environmental effects, these experiences continue to occur long after the last prisoner left. This ongoing activity is why Eastern State Penitentiary is not just labeled haunted, but ranked among the most haunted prisons ever known. The prison's reputation continues to grow with each passing year. New visitors bring fresh stories, and new investigations uncover more unexplained events. Eastern State Penitentiary stands as a chilling reminder that some places do not let go of their past. Instead, they hold on to it, replaying it endlessly, making the prison a global icon of fear, mystery, and unresolved suffering. As you listen to this story, remember that Eastern State Penitentiary is not just an abandoned prison. It is a place where silence was used as punishment, where minds were broken behind stone walls, and where suffering left marks deeper than chains or iron doors. Even today, long after the prisoners are gone, the echoes remain, whispers in the dark, shadows in empty cells, and emotions that refuse to fade. The question is not whether this prison is haunted. The real question is whether pain ever truly leaves a place where it once lived for so long. Maybe what people experience inside Eastern State is not ghosts, but memories that never learned how to die. If stories like this make you think, if they send chills down your spine, or if you believe some places still carry the weight of their past, then this channel is for you. Share this video with someone who loves horror, mystery, and true dark history. Let them hear these stories and decide for themselves what is real and what is not. And if you want more true haunted locations, more untold stories, and more journeys into places the world has tried to forget, then subscribe to this channel and stay with us. Because there are many more doors left unopened, and many more voices waiting to be heard.